Oh, that's a good one. Well, when so you left, that was your last year up there then? Last year jumping?
Yeah, I think that was, my last year jumping was 77. I can't remember whether that was 76 or 77.
Yeah.
And I might have, there are two sets of streamers, and it could be a...
Well, it had to be 77 because I saw the plane crash. I don't know if that was at the same year the plane crashed.
It could have been.
Yeah. I just remember it was so hard to get out of those Volpars. They turned so hard. And
Yeah,
just
they had a
couldn't get
step,
up.
a little step, and I was always missing the step.
Looking up,
You're always watching your foot blow around trying to get it in the step.
Yeah, it was a tough plane to get out of, I thought, and easy to get sick in.
Yeah.
Well, so when you finished up there, do you remember any of the training personnel that you had, Boise or Missoula or?
I remember Herb Korn, who's passed away some time ago from a heart attack. I remember Bobby Montoya very well.
What was he doing?
He was the foreman in charge of the base back then, or assistant foreman.
In Missoula?
Yeah. Oh, he was at Boise,
excuse
me. And I had lunch with Bobby like 10 years ago when I was in Boise. And I remember Rick Hudson, remember Benavides, remember John Snedden. A lot of the other names fade away from me. And they're all really, really good guys. I'm sure they have many more better stories than I do. They can probably tell a story better.
Well, each one's different. So you left there and jumping, that was it. You called her good. And why'd you decide not to come back?
I wanted to go to graduate school and get my PhD. Since I was a little kid, I'd always wanted to study hawks in South America. And for me, that was a lifetime dream. So graduate school is really a full-time thing. So I left jumping to finish up my PhD and spent a lot of time in South America.
Well, before we move past, when you were jumping, did you make any comparisons between the birds that you love to study and being in the area yourself?
It's funny. I always loved things in flight, and for many years, over 15 years, I trained and flew Harris hawks. We'd go out hikes in the desert, 2 or 3 Harris hawks a night, and we'd hunt rabbits, and it was just a sensationally spiritual adventure. Really, really fun. I'd walk for miles with these hawks. In fact, one hawk I had for 12 years, I figured I walked over 500 miles with them just doing a minute. And so I really enjoyed that, and there's something about flying that is really still exciting to me. Even now, I went flying this morning, and I went flying Friday in a tailwheel airplane I have. It was kind of like a Super Cub, and it's still hugely exciting to me. There's just something about that really grabs me. And I think jumping was the same way, but when I was jumping, I thought, well, I'll never have the money to learn how to fly. Only rich people fly. I never became rich, but I ended up building a couple airplanes so I could afford to fly.
So when you got down to South America on that Hard Edge Ranch in the Llanos of Venezuela, did anything you'd gotten from smoke jumping help you there, or just general background?
That's a good question. I think jumping makes you kind of more resilient. If you aren't resilient already, you become more resilient. And you lose weight in South America typically. You get really lean. You're surrounded by terrible poverty everywhere. And you get an appreciation of what's really important. And I get that now again here living on the Navajo reservation. What's really important. It kind of gets you grounded. So I think jumping probably made me more resilient, and it made me appreciate adventure. And going to South America was about adventure too.
Yeah. So how long have you been here teaching the Navajo?
Well, I retired, and then my wife is a nurse practitioner, and the Navajo Nation has a hospital in Crown Point, New Mexico, on the Navajo Nation, and they wanted her to come up here and work for them as a mid-level practitioner, as they call it. And so I thought, that's fine. I'd been retired, wasn't doing anything, although I really liked retirement. Then I noticed, accidentally looking through a magazine, they had a college here. I thought, well, I taught years ago in environmental science at a college and university. I thought, wonder if they want me, if I might have a course I could teach. And so I called them up. First I got online and I saw they wanted an environmental science instructor to teach upper division environmental science. I thought, well, I'll apply for that. But, you know, they're gonna, you know, pick a young guy. They're gonna pick, you know, somebody who's 60 years old and who's been around the horn. So to make a long story short, I interviewed for it and they said, great, we want you, so I came on board. And I really enjoy working with Navajo students. They're fun to be around. They're very well grounded because they all grew up in poverty. 40% of the Navajos here on the reservation live without electricity. And they have a really hard life, and it's nice. It's kind of fun helping them out, telling stories during lectures and hearing their stories back. And you know, the other day I was driving up north to look for some dinosaur bones. I found dinosaur bones up north. And I had this coyote cross the road in front of me. He was going left to right. And that's very superstitious to Navajos. So I got back. I was teaching one of the classes and I said, you know guys, I had this coyote cross in front of me on the road. He was going, I was very specific. I said, he was going left to right because I knew that directions were important about what connotation they gave, good or bad. They said he's going left to right. They go, well, what direction was he going? I go, he was going east. Is that good? And they said, kind of relief, they go, oh, that's okay. He wasn't going north, though, was he?
That's funny.
So I learn a lot from these guys. I have as many Navajo friends now as I do white friends.
Yeah.
They're really, I've learned a lot being around. It's fun.
Do the Navajo have sweat lodges?
They still do have sweat lodges. And what's fun, in the middle of a class, sometimes they'll start conversing in Navajo. And it's very clear to me now why the Japanese never broke the Navajo code, because you cannot remotely understand Navajo.
Yeah.
And I remember my dad was on Guadalcanal, Bougainville, World War II, where the code talkers were. And it's absolutely no wonder at all that the Japanese were confused by hearing Navajo language on the radio.
Yeah. I was at the Pentagon when they came and were given their awards. I met some of those guys.
Yeah, there's at least one that was still living here in Crown Point. A lot of them have passed away, of
Sure.
course.
Well, have you picked up anything as an environmental scientist from the Navajo that's any different or any?
Yeah, that's a good question. They look at things, I'm still learning, but they look at things kind of a circular fashion. They're certainly, generally speaking, not materialistic. They have a great sense of humor. They tend to look at more of the big picture. On the other hand, it's clear if you look at Navajo history that, you know, a lot of white corporations have taken advantage of Navajos. Uranium is one. During the Cold War, many of the miners that worked in uranium mines were Navajo, and they all died from various forms of uranium poisoning, including radon gas. And so they passed away, so there's an edge that justifiably, from their perspective, there's a mistrust. And I think that's good. And you know, they're getting educated, they're getting degrees, and they want to make a difference now.
But you put some time in with corporations. I'm curious, what would American Express have a PhD in zoology do for it?
I graduated in a recession, and all the biological jobs were basically gone. This was under Jimmy Carter. You know, to buy a house back then, the interest rate was 18%. And had a wife, had a little boy, and thought, well, American Express was looking for a senior analyst to run the quality assurance program. So to make a long story short, I got that job. Where I learned a lot, quite frankly, I ended up setting up quality assurance departments at American Express and Citigroup. Citigroup hired me from American Express, and I set up these departments that address the really scientific side of how you build quality in the organizations. And it's a good experience.
What's the general principle that needs to be understood when you're doing that?
Do it right the first time. And as Edward Deming said, a very famous quality control guy, took one of his seminars many years ago. It's also about giving people the opportunity to take pride in what they do. And but you have to have a scientific basis to figure out the source cause of the problem. You can do that statistically with sampling. Figure out what's causing the problem, then eliminate the problem. And that's the trick. More easily said than done. You have to build a culture to do that. And you know, a lot of federal agencies, for example, never remotely get there. You know, they're so entrenched in bureaucracy. And the great irony is, they think they're doing it right. They don't have a clue what right's all about.
Well,